My name is Vincent Slatt. I'm the Director of Archiving with the Rainbow History Project. This month for Black History Month, it's the 12th of February, 2023. We're going to do Talking Black Gay History with Ric Irick, the publisher of the Black gay magazine, The Mailbox. This conversation is being recorded. I'm speaking to you live from the District of Columbia, which is on the ancestral lands of the Anacostan and Nacotchtank peoples that were slaughtered and dispossessed by white settlers who wanted their land. So that's where I'm talking to you from today. It is Black History Month, and we celebrate Black history all year long, but especially this month, we want to learn about something new. So with no further ado, I'm gonna introduce for you the Rainbow History Project archives and why we're here today, and then turn it over to Ric to teach us about Mailbox and his contributions. And then we're gonna have some Q&A at the end. So feel free to throw those in the chat. This recording is also gonna end up on our YouTube channel, so you'll be able to watch it and share it with friends that couldn't participate today. The Rainbow History Project was founded back in 2000 because there was a lack of places to do research about the LGBTQ history in the greater Washington area. So since then, we've been collecting materials for our archives that are all available at the DC History Center. This last summer, we got a bunch of Black gay history materials from both Wason Jones and Alan Sharp. And amongst their collections, which are now available at the DC History Center, we got a bunch of Black gay magazines. We now have over 12 titles in the archive, but they're not all complete. We have a couple issues here, a couple issues there, and we know of some really important titles that we don't have yet. So in trying to get more people to move their things from the attics into the archives, we want to highlight today a really interesting publication called The Mailbox. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ric Irick, who is the long-term publisher of The Mailbox. And welcome, Ric. Welcome to town. Welcome to the Zoom. Happy Black History Month. Can you define for us The Mailbox? What was it? How long did it last? Who was on your team?
Well, happy Black History Month to all, and let's make this a year-long celebration. I'll start with that. Yes, I'm Ric Irick. I was the publisher of The Mailbox. We published The Mailbox from 1993 until 1999. And let me start with all due thanks to my president of our partnership, the real engine, Raymond Carter, who made Mailbox work. We'll talk much more about Mailbox in relationship to Raymond, but I needed to start with that. Mailbox was conveniently a way to be in touch with Black gay men that weren't necessarily plugged into other methods of media at the time. Let me just take you back 25 plus years before the internet and the ease of connectivity that we have now. There was not a way to consistently reach Black gay men in 1990. Let's just start there. Raymond was the operator of several clubs, but many of you will remember him from La Zambra and from The Edge. These are clubs that had events during the week, during the weekend, and Raymond was interested in reaching his constituents, his customers. So the first thing that he would do is to have a sign-up sheet at the door, and there the men could add their name, real or imagined, but more importantly, an email address. And once the email address was in there, then we had a way to be in touch. Some even left their address and, well, received snail mail from Raymond, again, delineating his upcoming events at his club at the time. Well, I got involved and thought that we could use a little content, just a little. And The image that you see on the screen there is one of our early attempts at Mailbox. It was a single page flyer that gave a little information on the front, a little bit on the back, and that got wrapped up with flyers from, well, mostly Raymond's enterprises, and mailed out to those that said they wanted to receive it. Free, fast, and in a hurry. Well, over time, Mailbox grew. And the reason for that was this was the early 90s. It was the time that the AIDS pandemic was really, really, really going strong. And so organizations, AIDS organization, HIV organization, Whitman Walker, so many, too many to come to mind at this moment. They wanted to reach our constituency. How do we reach Black gay men? They couldn't find a way to do it. Certainly it wasn't going to be on TV, not necessarily on the radio. There wasn't an internet yet. There's this magazine. It wasn't a magazine yet, but there's this guy with this mailing list, and he's sending this mailing list out to all of these men that are exactly the demographic that we're trying to reach, said these AIDS organizations. And so they asked to hitch a ride along with the mailings that Raymond was already doing.
And
well,
at this time, how many people were on the mailing list? How many people were getting the flyers?
It probably started off in the mid hundreds, because Raymond had already had the mailing list established. And so we just needed to put a little something other than a listing of his events that were coming up at his club. We added those flyers that were supplied by the advertisers. In this case, they were the AIDS organizations. They bring us 2,000 flyers to stuff into our envelopes and go out with Raymond's mailing. Well, it didn't take long for the idea to be born that, well, there could be more than just these flyers and these notices of Raymond's upcoming events. There could be a little content in there as well. Well, we certainly weren't in any shape to hire writers and designers and people to come in and do that. This was just going to be a little add-on to what you see there, which was the Mailbox newsletter, one-page flyer. Well, interest grew among those advertisers, not just AIDS organizations, but local organizations, entertainment clubs, organizations of men that were throwing annual parties. Everybody seemed to want to reach the mailing list that we had, which was steadily growing. At last count, when I was interested in counting, we had well over 2,500 names on that list that were receiving this mailing. So I was at the time, I was in publishing. I worked for a Fortune 500 company, McGraw-Hill, and I knew a little bit about publishing and a lot about advertising. And since I was in advertising sales for that company for several years. And it didn't take long to figure out we've got something here. We've got advertisers that are begging us to include them on the next mailing. Please stuff our flyer in, we'll pay you. And well, we came up with a chart, a price chart, a rate chart that they could expect to pay in order to hitch this ride along with the single page newsletter. It didn't take too long though before we decided to add some content, and I can get to that after your question.
You mentioned money, and that's always the key factor, right, for success. Yes. What were you charging for those circulations? Was this still just paid by the money out of the club?
Well,
how did that work? How did you finance this?
Well, we certainly asked those AIDS organizations who are our earliest clients to A, supply the flyers, and B, pay us for the privilege. And I have to actually remember, but it was somewhere along $250 for the ride, and we'll get you out to these 2,000 names. It seemed like no problem. They were asking us to include their flyers, and they came back and back and back. So eventually, we raised the price of the ad rates, of course. This ad portion was the reason that Mailbox was successful. We didn't have to go searching for financing. Financing was waiting for us at our door, wanting to ride every month, no questions asked. And if I look back at many publications over the years that rivaled Mailbox, which rose and fell, for whatever reason, I'll find that their financing wasn't as solid as was ours. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So financing is only one part of this. Now you need content. Nobody's going to be just looking for an envelope full of flyers. They want to see something in there. And this also turned out to be spectacularly easy. We have in Washington, in this country, talent beyond description. These are, in this case, men that had written and perhaps hidden their writings and read them for themselves, but maybe they didn't have an outlet for what they were writing about. And what were they writing about? They were writing things, and we have this in the subtitle of the Mailbox on that cover page that you're looking at, the intimate opinions, experiences, and emotions of Black gay men. We weren't talking about arts. We weren't talking about dance. We weren't talking about the reviews of the latest movies or theater that was in town. We were talking about what men wrote us about. And it didn't take long to realize after one or two submissions that were not solicited, that if indeed I solicited, we get a lot of stuff. And that's exactly what happened. In a couple of early issues, we wrote a small ad, send us your stuff. If, here's our email address, send us your stories. And it took exactly 2 weeks before we had more than we could possibly publish in a single mailing. That set up a monthly mailing. That set up 60 pages. We grew from a single page flyer that you showed earlier to the 60-page format that we ended with 6 years later. And in those 6 years, we never missed a single issue. Every issue was assembled, delivered, and enjoyed. And I run into men even to this day that tell me mailbox stories. But more about that content. That content came not just from our readers who wanted to share their lives with somebody, but also from professionals that were so generous with their time and with their submissions. One is with us now, Paul Smith. I couldn't possibly thank Paul Smith for the community service that he provided. We had men that were truly hanging on to every bit of counsel that Paul provided. Paul is a licensed social worker and now retired, and invaluable to our content. Again, it was a scary time. We were going through the early AIDS pandemic. At that time, an AIDS diagnosis basically meant you were going to die. Or you could go on this thing called AZT, and well, nobody really knew what that was going to do for or to you. People were very frightened. Men were very frightened. Paul came in and with his professional skill calmed the waters for us in a lot of ways that I'm still hearing about. Paul was our counsel, but we had a lot of other contributors, people that came in and just did things for us. Keith Boykin, who has gone on to be a CNN presenter, submitted monthly columns that were of vast help to our readership, just on being gay, being out, being yourself. Those kinds of contributions are things that a lot of Black gay men had never seen in writing or in any other media. I appreciate Keith as much as I appreciate Paul. We had medical advice from Theo Hodge, who was an MD new to the area at the time. He started as an advertiser. He continued as a contributor, addressing the various fears, the symptoms, all of the things that were going through our heads during this scary AIDS period. And I don't want to forget John Avery. John Avery was a contributor. John, by the way, I should say, is now the recipient of 2 local Emmys. So we got him before he got big, but he would contribute lots of entries in a cartoon series called John and Kev that was very, very much enjoyed. But this cover that you see here, this yellow cover, this is one of our annual issues. We would always do an AIDS issue every year. Now, this one is called Scary AIDS Stories. Why were they scary? These were submissions, unsolicited. Men told us what it was like when they sensed that something was going on in their bodies. They went and got it checked out. And then the moment that they got what was essentially then, thank God it isn't anymore, what was then a death sentence. And I reread this issue in preparation for our podcast, and it took me all the way back to that time, to just how frightening that was. And well, it's still difficult to talk about. Yeah. That was illustrated. You see that illustration that was done by David Barnes. David, if you're out there, I'd love to hear from you. David did so many wonderful illustrations that sold this magazine, not just to our subscribers, but all over the country. It was distributed in gay bookstores on the West Coast, in the Midwest, in the South, in Europe.
Well, thank you so much for all of that info and those great words. I just wanted to take a pause and let everybody think about the AIDS crisis and all of that activism, all of that suffering, all the friends we've lost, and how far we've come. So it is emotional. You're right. And I want to say thank you to Paul Smith, who is on the call, and the accolades that you've given him. And thank you for his service. And Raymond Carter, Keith Boykin, John Avery, Theo Hodge, David Barnes, all these guys that you were praising. I think we're grateful for their service, and we want to get in touch with them too and incorporate their histories into what we're recording. So thanks for giving respect to those people and the AIDS battles.
Couldn't have done it without them.
Yeah, very much. Let's keep talking. I'm taking so many notes here to follow up with down the road. But we were talking about how Mailbox grew so large and how it got so big. So you wanted to share with us kind of some origin stories and the march, the Million Man March. What was going on? How did this issue happen?
Well, of course, there was buzz about the Million Man March long before it happened. There was rumor that it would happen, then confirmation that it was happen. And so in my community, Black, gay men are men. And we certainly planned to be a part of this historic event, which was going to be held right here in Washington. Well, 1 million men were assembled. And of those million, there were several gay men who bravely, remember, this is not today, this is 25 years ago, bravely assembled and walked in the midst of this parade holding a banner declaring themselves as such. I know Keith Boykin and others were definitely a part of that. And we thought it would be appropriate before the actual march to assemble the thoughts and the emotions of Black gay men around this historic event, which I was happy to attend that day, and which, of course, you all know was organized by Louis Farrakhan. Did a very good job. The mall was well behaved. There were no crime. There was no crime. There was no one got hurt. There was even a collection at the end of $1 bill and a piece, and they collected about $1 million just for that to fund the event. And in the end, we were asked to pick up our trash behind us, and we picked up and cleaned and left the mall cleaner than we found it. But it was a historic day. We wanted to be a part of it, and we published a special issue just around that event in 1995.
And I'm going to ask, when you went to the march, were you part of the group of gay Black men that marched down 7th Street in DC?
I was not. I was not. I don't remember everything around that day, but I know I got there as soon as I could. I may have been involved in putting out an issue. So definitely wanted to get that done first. But I eventually joined.
I asked because Wason Jones, in his donation to the archives, gave us a whole folder of photographs that were done. A whole bunch of guys met up at the Carnegie Library, Mount Vernon Square, you know, with their banners declaring gay and Black, and they marched together down 7th Street to the mall. And Wason has told me very eloquently about how well they were received by the other men around and treated with respect and welcomed into the fold with, you know, all their announcements of being gay and Black, you know, at the same time. So that's why I asked if you were there. We've not yet digitized those photos, but that's a goal for us, you know, going forward to hopefully get those digitized and put online so people could see and remember that march.
I think a lot of younger people have forgotten what a big deal that was that day. I'll not forget ever.
Yeah. Are you going to plan another one?
Well, I don't have the reach of a Louis Farrakhan, but let's put it on the list.
Okay. Okay. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit more. We've got another issue here that we were talking about. If we go back a little bit, you know, you had talked about the subscribers and some of the content, you know, that people were writing in and sharing their stories with you, and you were receiving a lot of letters. Tell us a bit about this issue and how it came about, what kind of impact it had.
So while I called myself the publisher, I think more accurately, I was a curator of articles. For instance, we'd get something, some came by fax, some came by mail, some came by fledgling, at the time, emails. And so we'd print them out, and I had a series of boxes, very crude. And depending on the theme of the submission, I'd put it in this or that box. Well, one box, pretty early on, just came to the point where it was almost overflowing. And what was in that box eventually got into this particular issue that we called the Rapture. And it was about these Black gay men's experiences either as a victim of sexual abuse or as someone who had imposed sexual abuse upon someone else. Some of these men had been in prison and witnessed sexual abuse. All that said, we had the largest collection of stories in this one box, and I named it Rapture. And it was very difficult to assemble the stories that ended up in this issue because they were so hard to read. My pledge was never to change a word. I wasn't going to change a word. Maybe I correct spelling sometimes, but I wasn't going to change any of their testimonies as to what happened. And in this one, there is particularly one prison rape story. There's someone who was entrapped in a situation when he thought he was going to go home with this one attractive guy and found himself in a group situation with little ways to defend himself against a full-on rape. Other situations where they found themselves abused or in some type of incestual situation. So we published it. It is one of the many that completely sold out of our press run. We mailed our 2,000 subscribers. We sent the other 4,000 out to bookstores. And months after that, we were begged for additional issues of just that issue. To this day, I don't have one to share with you because I sent out my last one. And I believe Paul had a very soothing entry in that issue too.
So did you send me this image, or is this one I sent you?
I don't remember. You know what? That's my last one. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
I sent it to you.
So it might be one that we've got in the archives. We only have 12 issues in the archives right now. You know, from the numbers you were quoting, I think it was around 80 or so that you had published. So we are looking for others, but I'll look if this is one of the ones we have, because if people want it, maybe I should digitize it.
Well, my readers are out there. My readers are out there, and they've got issues of the mailbox that I no longer have. We'd love to see the issues that you have, people. So we will definitely talk about that at the end.
Yeah, and Glenn, if you wanted to, you could drop in the chat that link to our RHP guide. That's kind of our list to all the finding aids of our collections, and you will see all the names of all the magazines, and people can click through the link and see which issues of which titles we have. So you'll find on there, we've got BGM, Blackout, Blacklight, Bootyvox, Mailbox, but we've also got Real, SBC, What's Up, Women in the Life, Port of Harlem, like a lot of these different magazines we have, but we're looking for more. And we know there's other titles out there. So y'all can look through and see what we have, you know, on our list and what we're looking for. Before we move. Yeah.
On this issue, I just want to point out the photography of Hopeton Stewart. That that man in the hood, looking but not letting you see him. It more than poignantly explained where we were going with that issue. Hopeton was one of many photographers that who freely submitted their stuff to us, never asked us for anything. Here, take this photo. We'd like you to use this. He was one. Also Vega from Vega Studios. Valerie Phillips here in Washington, DC is still shooting the shot. Ajamu of the UK. I have a long story that I won't tell you about Ajamu. He is a photographer in London that is still making press and making news these days. They were early contributors to the mailbox. I will never forget them, and they were responsible for our success. Visuals, visuals, visuals.
Yeah, and can you tell us a little more about that? Like, you've mentioned some of these photographers. You also were talking about David Barnes doing illustrations.
Oh, yes.
Were you seeking those out, like on commission, or were they just offering you what they had, sending it in?
They were offering us. They wanted to see their stuff in lights, so to speak. There was all of this Black gay talent out there, And if they did anything the least bit erotic, then they wouldn't have a venue for their work. We were not afraid of images, erotic images. We knew that our readership wasn't going to be offended by them. And so when they offered, we accepted. And we gave them credit. And they heard from our readers just as we heard from our readers. And some of them even sold products through us in exchange for allowing us to use their images. All of them are all alive, thank God. So hi guys, hi out there.
Hit us up. We're always collecting. Since you brought up the erotic content and things like that, I also wanted to ask, a little bit more about that. I'd seen with a couple issues some of the personal ads that got published. I think we had a flyer of that. Your friend Keith in Philadelphia was telling me about the Raheem comics that were associated with this.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little more about Raheem, about personal ads? Like, give us some of that erotic, history. What was going on?
Well, this is pre-internet, pre-hookup through online dating. And so if you submitted an ad, a personal ad to the mailbox, we didn't charge you anything for it, we'd run it. And you might just hear from people, and apparently they did. I didn't want it to be all ads. It had to be some content, a few ads, and some advertising. So my job as publisher was really to balance all of that. We had so much that we couldn't, we could have gone to a weekly, but certainly I had other things to do. So it was only ever going to be monthly. One of those breakouts was the Raheem comic book series. Raheem was an invention of David Barnes, who illustrated some of our other covers. And he had so much to tell. He had all these stories that he was wanted to tell, but we only had 60 pages and we had to make a lot of room for all these other things. So he broke out into a separate, a breakout comic strip that was initially in the mailbox as a 2-panel centerfold that was illustrated by David and was worded by John and Kevin. Yeah, John Avery and Kevin. And it was, even at that point, it was still more that he could tell. He needed his own book. And so over at least half a dozen of these, David did a full-length comic rendition of a Black gay story that you probably could never have found anywhere else. You can find these things on the internet now. You can see Black gay erotica. You can certainly see cartooning, but you couldn't see these things then. So all of this was new to the eyes of mailbox readers. So in exchange for his cover work that he did for us, we advertised his full-length comic books, and I think he sold a couple of 100,000 or however, but he sold a lot of those to our readers who were glad to see his artistry, his talent. He's incredible. I'd love to hear from you, David, if you're out there somewhere.
Yeah. If anybody on the call can help us find David, let's get in touch. You can reach out to me. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, info@rainbowhistory.org. We'll try to connect. Yeah, that's really great. That's so awesome. Thank you. We had 2 more issues here that I just wanted to show. These are, again, this one is 97, and I think we've got Black Pride 98 issues. What do you want to tell us about this time in the publication? I also want to hear a little bit about why it ended and why you stopped, the evolution of Mailbox going in that direction.
Well, quickly, the orange cover is our annual Black Gay Pride issue. In May, Memorial Day has long been a Black Gay Pride celebration. It was brought about by members of our community, Ernest Hopkins, and a list of others that were instrumental to making this not only Washington, D.C.'s Black Gay Pride, but it was the nation's Black Gay Pride. We would have men coming from all over the country, from internationally, just to be here during this celebration. So we definitely put out an issue prior to that to tell the men where the parties and the bars and where everything could be found. So that we did easily every year. On the left, that Manhood July 1997 issue was representative of what most of the mailbox was about. In those issues, those 75 issues that we did over 6 years, those men were talking about what is manhood? How do I define it? How do I get it? How do I handle it? Lots of questions about manhood. We were specifically appealing to one subsector of the Black gay community. We were looking for men, and we wanted to talk to men who saw themselves as masculine, but who may have even would see themselves as on the down low, meaning they knew, whoever they may have dealings with would know, but no one else really knew who they were, who the real them were, and they wanted to keep it that way. So they would submit stories to us that they could tell to no one else. Most of those stories had to do with the search for love, the desire for love, the deep wanting of a partner, stories that would delineate what happened when they thought they had found this love and, well, it didn't work out that way. Disappointments in love, but all stories around love and desire, not so much sex. There was definitely stories of sex, but more about love and that desire for it. One issue that we put out, I don't think you have an image of it, is this one. It was called, "Is It Time for a White Guy?" And this was instrumental because Black men seeking Black love were finding themselves frustrated by this search. And so they began to look for other exits. Of course, today, now 2023, it's very common to see interracial couples, you wouldn't look at them twice. But then, if you made the decision that you couldn't find what you were looking for in the Black population of Washington, its surroundings, or nationally, then maybe it's time for a white guy. And that, again, was an overflowing number of submissions. We could never handle the number of stories that we got because men were, at the time, they were weighing it. Do I have to do this? Should I do this? It's just not like it was or is today. And so those stories kept coming. I wish I had kept half of them, but I downsized my living situation and I couldn't keep everything.
Do you still have some of those letters?
I don't think so. I decided to go with what we had published in 6 years. And if we hadn't published it in that much time, then there was a reason for it. So no, I can't claim to have any of those.
Shoot.
I should have gotten me 5 years ago.
Yeah. So I want to ask you more about this concept of manhood, and how guys were defining it back then in the 90s versus how gay Black men are defining it now and some of that transition. But I want to hear more about some of the white guys and how that came up in the mailbox. Like, What about the racism, the bad white guys, good white guys? Like, you got a lot of letters, but did you all talk about it a lot? You know, how did that
Well,
affect the conversations of manhood? Give me both questions, I guess, either one, you know?
well, while we had white readers, we definitely had white subscribers. Mailbox was a Black medium. So if indeed they wanted to participate, they could. They definitely submitted some things that were published as well. But this, well, in the mainstream of society, white guys are heard all the time.
Yeah.
And Black gay men talking at this level of intimacy were not. So
Right.
while we got submissions, we definitely published some of them. We didn't want to lose sight of our goal. Our target audience were Black, gay, masculine men, or men that saw themselves as masculine. And that also created a little controversy. We were, we were given the zhuzh by men that were not masculine or did not see themselves as such, who wanted in on the writing, on the photography, on the content. I couldn't use everything, and I wanted to speak to a specific audience that wasn't being reached otherwise. There were other media that were reaching the rest of the guys, but this guy who didn't tell his wife who he was, okay, who had never dreamed of telling his parents who he was, who nobody at work knew about him, that's who we wanted. And he was willing to receive a brown envelope once a month that had, as its return address, had two letters.
There you go. Yeah.
MB. MB. And the picture of a mailbox, which you can see in the upper right-hand corner of the illustration that you have there.
Yeah.
That and the two letters MB with an exclamation mark were his down low way to be connected to the community that we brought him. Okay, now we didn't want to lose him. I didn't want to go into a lot of different areas that I was pulled in, which were certainly politically correct areas to go into, but we were trying to serve our target audience, and it was all we could do just to keep that guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I was told we should be appealing to women, to lesbians, or that we should appeal to transsexuals or other people that were not seeing themselves in that strictly Black male, masculine male way. But we had our hands full just serving him, and that was our success.
Yeah. Yeah. And that makes sense because you can't be everything to everybody and still target the group you're targeting. Like, that makes sense.
I think that was some of the other magazines that came and went. They made that mistake, trying to appeal to everyone. That, in addition to not having the funding, that is everything. To have your money right is everything. So why did this all come to an end?
Yeah.
1993.
Before you end, can I interrupt you one more time, please?
Sure.
You mentioned women briefly, but I want to hear more about the ladies. How did they appear in the magazine? What were the guys writing about the women in their lives and that they interacted with? Did that ever get published?
We didn't. We didn't publish women's feelings, women's emotions.
But I mean men writing about the women. Did the men ever write in about their moms or their sisters or their wives?
If they did, it was tangentially. They were speaking about keeping this information from mom or from wife or from girlfriend. No, we didn't speak so much, or we didn't hear so much about the interactions with these people or their family life. That wasn't our goal. We did, by the way, start briefly an offshoot of Mailbox that was called Female, spelled Femail. And we brought in a woman that published it, and it may have survived a dozen issues, but it didn't have nearly the impact or interest as the Mailbox did. And so it was eventually dropped. But Mailbox came to an end essentially because of the advent of the internet. You didn't need a mailbox if you could sign on to AOL or what have you and be in touch with people. You know, today we have other media like Reddit. You can sit there and read about people's experiences and emotions and opinions all day, all night. We didn't have that then. The AIDS organizations and the private advertisers that came to us, they came to us desperate to reach our audience. On the internet, everybody's available to the internet, and the internet is available to everyone. So our highly specific audience of then probably has been dispersed today, just like the gay club scenes that used to be in DuPont Circle. Well, you go to DuPont Circle now and you see baby carriages, and you know, it's just, people say it's not necessary to have clubs anymore because of the internet. Well, it's not necessary to have Mailbox anymore because of the internet.
So this life without the mailbox, you know, you mentioned AOL. We know Google was invented in 1997, right? So it just got started at the time of these two issues there. Yes. What's replaced Mailbox since then? What is missing for gay Black men now that we don't have the mailbox? Where are they going? Where do they chat? What does 2023 look like? Well,
their world has been expanded, of course, by the internet. Grindr, Facebook, all of these are providing a piece of what we provided before the internet existed. I was recently asked for advice from a young man who wanted to start up a Black gay publication. And I'm afraid I didn't have very good news for him. I didn't think it would be very successful. He wanted to provide it in print form. And well, I used to be a print magazine guy. I used to get Newsweek and Time and all of that. I don't get any of that stuff anymore. It's all online. I'm annoyed when something comes in the mail and I've got to flip through the pages. I don't want to do that anymore. Washington Post, New York Times, even the Wall Street Journal, everything is online. And if it's not, I'm probably not going to read it. So their world has been expanded, but at the same time, it has been diluted. You know, we were a strong monthly that hit you where you wanted to be hit, or maybe not. But now it's out there somewhere on the internet, but it's all diluted and it's everywhere else. It's not in that monthly magazine that men eagerly opened. And I still run into men here in Washington that tell me about it and its impact on their lives.
Yeah. Well, that's great you say that, because that's why I got interested in this, because someone was telling me about Mailbox and the interest in their lives, and bam, wanted to learn more. So I'm really glad that you have talked with us today and taught all this important history. I wanted to now kind of shift over to some audience engagement and take some Q&As from people. My view is weird. I can't see everybody, but I know you mentioned Paul Smith. Michael Van Zandt is one of our fellow board members. I see Courtney Williams on my little screen here. So there's some people that might have some good questions and ask for them. I had gotten one in advance of our meeting, so I want to let that person go first. And their question was, what have you preserved from Mailbox? Now that you've donated things elsewhere, what do you still have in your attic? What have you held on to for yourself?
It's a shame. Of our 72 issues, 75 issues, I may have a dozen. At the end of our run, I realized that times were changing. I certainly wanted to do some other things. I had devoted 6 years of my life to Mailbox. I wanted to secure my future to the point where I am now. I'm retired now, but I certainly had to do some things starting in about year 2000 to get to this point. And all of those things had been put on hold while I was churning out the mailbox with the help of all of the mentioned people and Raymond Carter, my business partner. It was a lot of commitment. And as I said, we never missed an issue. And imagine having a commitment that you can't miss every month for 6 years. So at the end of it, I realized it was slowing down, that it was going to end because of this new thing that people were using called the internet. And so we brought it to a close and buried her in pride, basically.
In pride, wonderful. So when was the last issue? Do you remember?
1999. I think it was the October 1999 issue, if I'm correct. But again, I only have about a dozen of them. Would love to see some of those. However, we are enshrined in the Schomburg Collection in New York of Black culture, and it's available digitally there. So paper doesn't last forever, but hopefully museums do.
Well, paper lasts longer than PDF. So we got 1,000-year-old paper. So print out your emails. Because I was going through some old lesbian emails from the late 80s a couple weeks ago. They're over in the corner of my living room there. And I'm like, oh, good. Thank you. She printed them.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey, Rick, it's Glenn.
Yeah.
Keith has a question. Keith.
Oh.
Please join the discussion.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
First of all, thanks to you all for hosting this event to talk about our history. And thanks, Rick, for such an excellent and insightful interview. So I wanted to just make a comment. The issue of what is there now? What is there that fills the voids, so to speak, of a mailbox? I think Rick answered that very appropriately, but I think what we are starting to see, first of all, we have a generation of people who don't read. They don't read books. They don't read magazines. Rick talked about the Black Gay, the Pride, Black Pride. One of the events we always used to have in DC was a forum for Black gay authors. And that was something that we looked forward to because we wanted to see what was out there and get the books and talk to the authors. And now when we have that forum, nobody shows up. There's like 20 people in there. The younger guys simply aren't interested in finding out, who's telling their stories. I think what we see in the Black gay community is what we see in the Black community as a whole. I think we feel that we've achieved everything, all those struggles that were fought. We have individuals who don't understand how they got the freedoms that they now have. They have no connection with that. And in larger African-American context, you see this where students in college, they're like, okay, why do we need to have a Black student union? That's not important, blah, 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 blah. Then they go out into the larger world and they start experiencing racism. And they're like, oh my God, I'm not prepared. I don't know how to deal with this. And so what happens, because we've detached ourselves from the history, we don't know how to confront the problems that we now face. So a lot of the things that we've achieved or accomplished as far as gay rights concerned are now under threat, which is exactly what's happening to the larger African-American community. Voting rights are under assault like they've never been before. This nonsense about critical race theory, which no one even knows what it is. It's not taught anywhere, but they're gonna ban it anyway. You look at the assaults on Black history. So all of this stuff has come back, and the current generation doesn't really understand how to fight, how to cope with it, because they've become detached and they don't understand the history. And so I think there's something similar going on with Black gay men expressing themselves, writing themselves, things that we had a need for, they take for granted. And I don't think they understand the benefits, and they don't understand the history. I know that's a lot, so I'll shut up, but thanks again.
I thank you for that, and it's something I agree with. I will say I don't remember who made this quote, but if you don't remember your history, you are doomed to repeat it. Okay, and I'm sorry, say again.
I think that was Frederick Douglass. Hi, Chuck Hicks.
Thank you. I'll take that. Thank you so much, Chuck. I appreciate it, and it's certainly true. It rings true to this day. If you don't read, more than 9/10 of the world is hidden from you. Okay, what can I say about that?
You know, Rick, just a thought is I think that when you were doing all this stuff and had the meetings at your house and all of that, there certainly was a group of people who was a part of that. And even when I look back to the first Pride Day that we started and the second one, that there were a lot of people, but it wasn't everybody. And it never has been everybody in terms of the African American community, in terms of struggle, in terms of the Black, gay, lesbian, LGBTQ3 community. It's never been everybody.
No.
It will always be a group of people who would take that fight on to make it better for everybody. And I think that you did that. I think that people like Courtney and Michael Vincent and a whole bunch of other people who've taken that fight on. And as my good friend Frank Smith from the African American Civil War Museum says, I got one more good fight on me for MD.
Yes.
I'll take that into
Yes.
it. And
Yes.
I think that becomes important to know that there's a whole group of people out here who won't be, they'll take advantage of what you do, but there's still a group of people who are gonna fight to preserve, to keep what we have.
You are so right. Of course, this is now and that was then. Back then, it was hard to find a number of men who would be out.
Yeah.
I put my real name on the front of that magazine. On the inside, I would have a editorial with my own picture. Back then, it was seen as scandalous that I would actually show my face and use my real name and be out. But I think that's what was required. And well, those men that you listed were men that were also willing to stand behind their name, their sexuality, and be out.
Rick, this is my last comment. It said, I remember when we first started that gathering at your house.
Yes.
For people. And that I think the first 2 times, 3 times, it was a really small, nice group. But as word got out, it became
big,
huge. And you
yes.
moved it from your house, it's where you lost me, but you moved it to the club. And I'm drawing a blank on where the club that you moved it to.
Yes, to Tracks.
Yes.
Yeah, my poor house was screaming under the weight of 75 yes. men in my home.
Yes.
So yeah, that evolved into what we called the talk show, which became a talk-themed mailbox, where men would come and dealing with the particular theme that we had for that night, they would stand up and take the mic and pour out their souls and tell us things that they had not told anyone else. That was a lot of fun too.
Yeah, it was huge.
And what years was that going on?
This
taking
was
notes
probably in the last 3 years of the mailbox, say 1997 until 1999, somewhere around there. And it was called the BGM, as Black Gay Male Talk Show.
Yeah. And it was hundreds of people who came on Sundays.
Yeah, it was just new. No one else was doing it. It was live. It wasn't music and dance. It was talk.
Yes.
And we had presenters that would come and sit on the stage and field the questions. Just, you know, there were plenty of people who had lots of questions about transsexuals who, although they're a part of our community, they weren't well understood by some. And so we'd invite them, come sit on the stage, tell us about your life, and then answer questions. And it would go on and on and on, because it was unique, but also a lot of work on top of the mailbox, on top of my regular job. It had to come to an end. Even if the internet had not ended it, it was going to end. I had other things in me that I wanted to do.
Great. Paul has a question.
Well,
Go ahead, Paul.
it's probably not simply a question. It's the fact that I remember all of that, and I was very much, you know, I was right there with you, Rick. I remember we probably talked once or twice a week during that period because for about a year I had a monthly column that on relationships. I had just started a private practice in clinical social work. I became a therapist, and I was working primarily with Black gay men. But they didn't really know how to get a hold of me because I wasn't featured necessarily boldly in the Blade. But it was through you, Rick, that helped me realize that you need to get bold. You need to put your picture out there in your ad. And
you did.
And I did. And of course, that shifted my entire practice because then people knew where to go because there was nobody else who was African-American or people, person of color advertising boldly. They didn't know who they were. But anyway, I just remember just how poignant that entire period was. And I think you did a real service to the community, unlike anything else anybody did, because you were right there giving them a place to go and giving them information, resources, etc., for people to really get help and to expand their lives and become a little bit more proud of who they were as opposed to hiding. So I just really think that you were a vital part of that period. And right now I'm old, retired, and I'm still out there. I got my foot in. Still, we have groups. We now moved to groups where where men are invited to meet in groups in a circle to have these sorts of discussions. Probably not much in writing. There's probably very little that you're going to find in the written word. But I think I think slowly we're trying to hold on to some kind of legacy that that there are places that you can go and receive the kinds of information that you need, because I still believe that people are still when it comes to especially Black and gay, it's still a difficult road to hoe in the Black community.
Yes.
And elsewhere, of course, that hasn't changed that much either.
I think our community could use more of what you served then. The counseling that you provided helped us through scary times, Paul. It was very scary. And
Indeed.
we didn't have a lot of leadership. We were on our own. And then we had this licensed professional that agreed to every month come on and show his face on his ad, on his byline, and say, okay, I'm Paul Smith. Now let me sit down and try to help you with some of these things. And it made counseling more attractive, I believe, to our readership. A lot of people, I know in the Black community for sure, don't believe in counseling, don't believe in therapy. But here we were, this guy was standing up next to our little rag and helping hold us up as a legitimate way to kind of seek your way out of darkness. I think it made therapy and counseling a lot more digestible to a lot of men back then, Paul.
Well, thank you very much. I agree. I think so. And appreciate you providing the resource.
We were delighted to have you.
Thanks for that. I'm loving this. I just want to say for the recordings, let's remember to say our names. So that was Dr. Paul Smith, and I think before him was Chuck Hicks, and before him was Dr. Keith Crawford, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I did see Isaiah Poole had his hand raised. We'd been in touch about a question he had too, so maybe you want to come next.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. First of all, Rick, just thank you for all of the work that you did on Mailbox. I know it's hard work. And I also know that, as the magazine grew, it hit this thing called the internet, which threw a lot of things up in the air in terms of how best to move forward with this kind of forum. I think in the same way that Keith Crawford does, that there is somewhere in here, there's a missed opportunity, and perhaps it's not something that the people in this particular gathering can solve. But as I think about it, I'm not sure, other than Facebook groups or, other forums, isolated forums, I don't know of a place where Black gay people can have real talk, can be exposed to intelligent commentary and analysis and stories about their experience. And I wonder if there in fact was value for Mailbox to be an online portal for that sort of, and again, intelligent commentary, thought, stories, conversation that would be inherited by the next generation of Black gay literary and thought leadership.
Thank you. I haven't seen you in years. I'm so glad to see you now. It could have been continued. I think it would have been under stress. I didn't know it at the time, but my business partner, Raymond Carter, was dealing with health problems that eventually led to his demise.
Oh.
I think that became clearer as the years went on.
Okay.
I wanted to do things to secure my own future after spending 6 years in Mailbox, and I'm glad that I did, because now I'm retired today. And then there was this internet thing that had to be figured out. I don't even think the internet in the beginning knew what its power was. It came, it presented itself, and then it sat there for a couple of years trying to figure out, okay, what do we do with this? Well, I certainly wasn't going to figure out how to employ this new thing in our old medium. So I was tired. Raymond was not well. We gave it up. And I hoped that younger contingents would pick it up and go with it. And I offered my expertise. I was more than happy to speak to anybody that wanted to talk about it. But the ball got dropped. And again, not fully dropped. It was dropped in the face of the advent of the internet, which did provide more power, but a lot more dilution.
Well, let me just say that having working in mainstream media during that time period, and in fact, even when I was at Penn State University, writing papers about the internet, very few people. I mean, there was lots and lots of trial and error. So nobody's going to, Rick, everybody's going to totally understand, what you just said about having this new thing and being totally unsure about how to make it sustainable in this new world.
Exactly.
So that's why I kind of come at this with, gratitude for taking it as far as you come. And I hope that this discussion can be packaged in such a way that some smart person will look and say, you know what, Mailbox 2.0, whatever it's called, whatever it looks like, should be brought into being.
If I could just make a comment just to address one of the questions Mr. Poole raised about a venue or places where people can go, where Black gay men can go. There are a couple of venues that do the talk shows. As Rick talked about his work with the talk shows. There's a group called Mandate that meets every month, and I think they may have a grant to support some of their discussions, but they address a full spectrum of issues that are relevant to Black gay men, dating, relationships. They actually have done quite a bit and seem to attract a slightly younger group of guys. And then there's also Andrew Harris, who many of you may know. And Andrew started his talk shows around the same time that Rick was doing his.
Before mine.
Before yours, yes. Andrew actually has been going for about 30 years. He hosts a meeting at his home. And one good thing to remember about Andrew, he's an excellent cook. So you're going to get dinner and drinks when you go and discuss just a full, again, just the whole gamut of issues: financial health, dating, service to the community, spirituality. So Andrew still does his. So there are some venues that are still around that people can participate in.
Thank you for that. Are those on YouTube?
No,
They
I don't think they're
are
recorded.
not.
Okay.
They're not.
Donald, please join the conversation.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, hi there.
I'm sorry, I meant to, all of a sudden my computer wants to act up. Hello, Ric Irick. I wish I had known you were going to be so famous. I would have paid so much more attention back in the day. And now you're this legend. And I was thinking that at the time of Mailbox, who knew that this was going to be history? And I'm sure I wish I had saved them now, because obviously they're very valuable on the internet. But
yes,
my question to you is, what was one of the most significant things that you learned while doing Mailbox, and how did it change you as a Black gay man?
Wow. I think that men could be intimate, not sexually, but that they could and would share things that they had barely allowed themselves to think. But if indeed they had the promise of anonymity, then they would let it come out in reams, and it did. The things that I read would sometimes make my then existent hair stand on edge, and it made me sometimes wonder if that would be pushing it a little bit too far to put this out there. We documented someone's death, basically, and he went through all of the stages that he was feeling in his body and the changes. And I didn't know if we should, but I knew that a lot of our constituents, our readers, were going through that too. So let's go. So what did I learn? It made me braver. I think I put my name and my face out there, but that was just my little bit of courage. When I saw what these men were willing to say and share about themselves and their lives and their deaths, their demise, it made me fearless. So I'm more fearless today than I would have been had I not been privy to the stuff my eyes have seen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chuck Hicks, I think you got your hand raised there.
Yeah, there's a comment where first Courtney is trying to get on. Is there some way you can get him on? He has been trying to speak. He texted me and said he couldn't get on. Can you let him on? You see Courtney?
I don't know. Glenn, can you help?
Courtney and I have been texting back and forth. So I
Okay.
just posted a comment. But Courtney will need to unmute to speak.
Got it?
There we
Hey,
are.
Courtney.
Hey,
Oh,
Courtney.
okay. I knew it was something simple I need to have done.
Welcome.
Right. Well, Rick, I applaud you for all the work that you and Raymond did in putting the mailbox together. I know when you first started, it was just a collection of flyers, and they evolved to a magazine that, you know, everybody looked forward to. And those articles were very good. I remember the cartoons and the articles that really raised a lot of questions in our community. And I think it really did make a difference in the lives of people, because people who had never been connected, because like you said, we didn't put our business in the Blade or any other magazine or whatever. We were basically flyers. Anytime we wanted to communicate with each other, we passed out flyers. So
Exactly.
that was this was an outgrowth of that. Several years after the mailbox closed, Charlotte Smallwood and I got together, and she wanted to start the communication again, because out of the mailbox came female, which is the addition of, it was the same thing that Raymond Carter basically gave his mailing list over to Charlotte, so she can send it out to the women that she had on her thing, and he actually paid for the postage and everything. And I think they did the female for about a year or so. I think it was like 2000 something that they did it.
About a dozen issues, yes.
Yeah, a dozen issues right there. Yeah, he actually paid for the postage and everything. So, and then after Raymond passed, and Charlotte was trying to figure out, said, well, what do we need to do to kind of combine both? So that's why we came up with the Community Life newsletter, which,
and thank God for it.
18
Yes.
years
Yes.
tomorrow. I have not moved the issue since March of 2005, when the month that Wanda Austin died. That's when it started.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
This
so
is the
that was
this
an
is the
outgrowth of the mailbox.
outgrowth of the mailbox.
Yes.
And on internet.
Yes, yes. And I have a couple of thousand people who receive that very faithfully every month. And I don't send it to them, they'll call me or email me. Right. So it gets out to a lot of people. I send it out directly to about 1,000 people. Then I tell other people to send it out to who they network with.
Yes.
So it goes to several thousand people per month. So we celebrate now over 200 editions. Next month be 18 years. Haven't missed a month yet.
And it is a delineation of what's next, what's coming,
Yes.
what to expect this month. And I am one of your faithful readers.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you.
So who's next? Do we have any more questions? Oh, hey, something just switched. Uh-oh, did I break something?
I read, this is Courtney.
No,
I
no, I
actually
took it
have I don't know. I have mailbox editions dated 2002 and 2001.
We'd love those. We'd love to see those, Courtney.
I don't know. And you know, I had some of the other ones from the Black Guide and all of the other ones back during the day. I had Diplomat and we still have I think one of Sidney Brinkley's the Black Lights too.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
hit me up, Courtney. I do house calls, so I
Yeah.
would totally come and help you go through that stuff. I'd emailed you last week, but I can email you again.
Okay. Okay.
Because I heard through the grapevine you had some cool stuff. So,
Yeah, I got 2 boxes in the basement. I'm trying to downsize now. I just have a lot of information.
yeah.
I don't know what to do with it because if I'm no longer around, I think people are just going to throw them out.
That's
A
exactly
lot
what
of
this
history
is.
go back. My involvement in the community from the early 80s.
Yeah.
Wow.
From the Hughes Roosevelt era.
Yeah.
Club, Democratic club that was set up for gays and lesbians and blacks back then, back in 82, I think.
Yeah.
We'd love to see that stuff.
Yes.
And that's exactly what the archives is about, right? Is saving it, making it available. We have the ancestors who've passed away, but luckily we have some of their stuff we've preserved.
Yeah, I've
right?
done the
So that's
oral
why
history. The oral history part is a good part because I've talked to a lot of my friends into doing the oral history portion of that. And some of them are no longer there, but at least their lives and the things that they did are preserved. If people don't really know about what went on or whatever in the oral history project.
Well, and that's
on there. So we need to encourage more about people who are still left around, Buddy too, and all of them, whatever, that we need to encourage some of our other friends who have a lot more, got history even before us back in the 70s, maybe even before Stonewall, the ones who still around.
That's
share some things.
That's a phenomenal commercial for us, Courtney.
Yes.
Our director of oral history is on here. And because you said her name, Wanda Alston, we got 2 interviews with her before she got murdered.
Right.
So because she participated in our oral histories, we have saved, what she told us about her life and what she'd been working on. So that really is important. I want to say,
I think Market did the interviews. After he left me, he went to Wanda to do the oral interviews. I remember Mark did the interview.
Yeah, I think Mark did
yours.
yours.
I'm leaving you. I'm going to see Wanda for the oral interviews. Yeah,
that's great. And we have our director of oral history on the call, Jeff Donahue. Hey, Jeff. Okay. Any other questions or thoughts for Rick or just open mic?
Well, I'll just say I'm Rick, and I would love people to turn in your archives. As you said, Vincent, from attic to archives, please send that stuff for preservation, forever.
Yeah, exactly.
Send it in.
Exactly.
Yeah, these people will take good care of it.
Rick, do you remember this book about courage? Mickey
Oh,
Fleming.
you're gonna make me cry. Okay, now you're gonna make me cry.
I remember
All
being at your home. I believe Mickey gave a presentation there one time.
Yeah.
I just want to make people aware of the fact that the book exists. Because all this seems like it's about courage. Yes.
Wow, you got me with that one, Isaiah. Sorry, Mike. You got me with that. I typed that transcript in the opening pages. He gives me credit for sitting there and typing the whole thing out in those days when it had to be done before it could be submitted to the publisher. And as I typed it, as I remember, I cried through his admissions and what he had been through in his short life. Yeah, you got me with that one. Sorry. We have a lot of stuff that we have a lot of stories that needed to be told that weren't. Mailbox tried to tell some of those stories. I had nothing to do with it. I was just the conduit. But I'm happy to have had any involvement in getting out the opinions, emotions, and experiences of Black gay men during the scariest time in our history.
Take one more comment from Chuck.
A couple of brief comments. One is that I don't know if it's back up or not, but at one point, the DC Public Library, in connection with, I'm drawing a blank on where people can go and have coffee and stuff. The center worked together, and they would have authors, Black gay authors, come maybe once a month, and they'd have these discussions about a book they had written, and you could buy it, but it was also, if you knew about it, you could come in and have these wonderful discussions about it. I think we stopped during the COVID, but I'm not sure if it picked up or not. But of course, our good friend, what's his name, Michael, who works in the public library, Turner Freeman.
Yeah, Turner Freeman.
Turner coordinates a whole bunch of wonderful stuff and allows to Turner and Derek. There's a lot of ways and opportunities that people can check and learn something about. There's gay archives at the Martin Luther King Library that is coordinated through Derek and Turner Freeman, but back to Turner Freeman was wonderful in setting up these monthly book reviews of people who written stuff, and a lot of them were basically local artists, and it was a way to support them. And I'm not sure if it's up back and running yet, but I'm sure that it will be. As I say, my hats off to Rick and a whole bunch of people for having the courage that they did to do all the things that they did. I just appreciate their efforts and their courage. And sometimes when they got big, Rick always says, Chuck Hicks left me holding the bag, but I knew it was in good hands, and I could do other things. But Rick has just been wonderful and was so amazing. I think we hadn't seen each other in 10 years, and we met going to one of Sidney Brinkley's plays.
Yes.
Who has done a wonderful job of captivating another part of Black gay life, is his writings, his plays, his readings. So with me, I appreciate everybody, and thank you.
All right, Chuck.
Well, good. Well,
I think he meant Alan Sharp.
Yeah. Alan Sharp.
Oh, yes, right.
go ahead, Paul.
I would like to point out an ongoing resource organization gathering. You name it. It's just a huge gathering of Black gay men that happens 3 times a year. It has continued since '86. It's called a Doty. I don't know how well known this is, but I've been involved for over 21 years, and it has really been an amazing resource for young Black gay men, and also those who aren't so quite so young, to find community, to find an affirmative group of people that looks just like them, who have, I think, have really established themselves well in a world that it continues to be homophobic and racist and all that. But this organization, it's kind of like, for me, it's we call it a retreat, because it's a place to go to what? Renew, reinvigorate. Some of you may have already been exposed. I know my good friend, where is he? Is he still here?
I'm
One
here,
of my
Paul.
problems is remembering names. But anyway.
Donald Birch, we've met.
Donald Birch, yes.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Donald, but
you
that's
used
where
to
I'm
be
at in
my therapist.
dotage.
I know you forget people.
And I don't mean to. It's just that in my dotage, in my 80s, that's one of the things that's happening. But anyway, I just wanted to point out that there are some rays of hope out there that has continued to commit itself to the things that we were working on back when we were with Mailbox, Rick, and it continues to grow, which is a very, very hopeful sign, especially in this day and age. Getting very confusing out there.
Yes, it is. Indeed, it is. So, Vincent, you asked what was next?
Yeah, so that's always the thing. I like to kind of finish a interview with the last question for you, Rick. So if you would, I would just like to know if you could tell something to today's youth, send a message out there specifically to the young ones today, or if you had a chance to say something to your younger self, to who you were way back in the day, what would you say? What's the message you would give people?
I'll quote Gloria Gaynor. I will survive. You will survive. We can survive if we work on this together, if everybody does a little something, no one has to do everything. And we turn to our community leaders to do everything, and they get worn out. And they just drop by the wayside just due to having expended all of their energy. Whereas if everybody did a little something, if everyone were a little bit more out, a little bit more courageous, no one would have to do it all. That's it. So, in closing, I'll just say, if I had a next thing to do, it would be to get us some OGs together. OG stands for old guys. I would like to bring retiring, older men together in some type of regular format and just talk. Maybe eat something too.
I think that's an awesome goal. I'd love to hear about it, see it happen. So good luck getting that done. I think y'all should be in touch and make that work. I want to thank you, Rick, for coming today and teaching us about this history and recording it. Thank you to everyone who participated with their questions and everyone who showed up to learn. We're gonna download this recording and make it available. You can always get in touch with us if you've got more questions. info@rainbowhistory.org. You can shoot us an email. This will go up on Zoom or on the YouTube, and we'll share that out with everybody. And we hope to get more of those conversations going. If you've got other magazines, if you've got other things for the archives, send them our way. With that, I'm just going to end with Happy Black History Month, everybody. Thank you again, Rick, for coming, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Fantastic,
everybody.
guys.